everyone, it's Abby. This is my very first review in 2013 because I finally finished my first book. I'm really excited to be sharing it with you because it's furthering my goal in my New Year's goal for 2013. Book number 1 is The Other Boleyn Girl by Philippa Gregory. It's a story based on the events of Anne Boleyn's sister Mary in the 14th century. You follow her from her arranged marriage to William Carey when she was 14 years old, all the way to her sister Anne's execution in 1536. I stole the synopsis for this book off of Amazon just because I'm terrible at summing things up. When Mary Boleyn comes to court as an innocent girl of 14, she catches the eye of Henry VIII, dazzled by the king. Mary falls in love with both her golden prince and her growing role as the unofficial queen. However, she soon realizes just how much she is a pawn in her family's ambitious plots as the king's interest begins to wane and she is forced to step aside for her best friend and rival, her sister Anne. Then Mary knows that she must defy her family and her king and take her fate into her own hands. I'm not sure how actually true this work of fiction is, but after researching how the Catholic Church broke away from England, I realized that I learned a lot of history just from this little tiny book right here. It did a good job of really teaching me history when I didn't realize I was actually teaching, when I was actually learning anything. I thought I was reading this for fun. The book started being entertaining right away. That was probably the best thing about it. No matter how long the author would drag on about the same event, I would still be flipping through it like I could not get enough of it. Like I had to know what happened next. I also love the fact that even after you learn every single character's flaws, you still find some way to love. You still find some way to be sorry for every character. I also love the fact that even after you learn that every character has flaws, because believe me, every character in this novel is flawed, you end up feeling hate towards every character at least once. You still wind up feeling sorry for them 3 pages after they tick you off. Even after all of Anne's hate and ambition towards her sister Mary, because they're supposed to be rivals, and because sisters are rivals, I feel sorry for Anne eventually. I, for one, have never felt such hatred towards my sisters, but that's probably because we weren't being sold like cattle in a meat market. After her uncle told her to take Mary's place as the favorite of Henry VIII, she became Queen of England because of it, but that was all she had. As Anne falls from being his lover to his wife to eventually being hated by Henry VIII, even after all of that, you still feel sympathy for her. You still want to reach out and like pet her and tell her it's okay, Anne. It's okay. It's alright. But that was after she was beheaded, so I kind of couldn't do that. But she was beheaded for false charges just because Henry wanted to go off and marry another pretty girl after he had already annulled his first marriage. He just wanted to be rid of her. And even though the book was written from Mary's perspective, I didn't find her to be a very likable character. Even though she had been forced to become nothing, to step aside to become pretty much Anne's lady-in-waiting while she pursued after the man that Mary was in love with, was still arrogant and defiant until she married her husband, William Strafford, secretly. But her second husband, William Strafford, after her first husband died, I should probably mention that, her first husband died. William Strafford was probably the most likable character in this book, but even he had his moments where I wanted to punch him in the face. That all being said, one of the things I disliked about the book was how lengthy it was. Yes, it spanned over 15 years of history, and I understand you need to go into a little depth within 15 years of history, but I didn't need to read about every single time Anne would play cards and play music with her court in her chambers. Isn't there a more efficient way of getting across that pretty much all Anne did was play around and be arrogant while she was queen. Another thing I wasn't fond of was the fact that I didn't feel like I was in the 14th century when I read this book. It felt like it was just an average, everyday thing that was happening, aside from the fact that the characters are named Mary and Anne Boleyn. I would sometimes forget that they were living hundreds of years ago in the 14th century, and it wasn't just a book, a 735-page book about adultery. Well, it sort of is, but there is history to it. In all, I would give it 2 out of 5 stars. It wasn't the greatest piece of fiction I've ever read, but I don't really read the greatest pieces of literature in the entire world. I was determined to finish it, even if it dragged on. And I eventually did finish it, but I wouldn't make an effort to reread it anytime soon. I did genuinely like the book. It just, it wasn't my favorite. So, give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down whether you like the book. I would much prefer a thumbs up. You can comment below. You can subscribe. I don't really know what the button is. You can let me know in the comments below what you thought of the book when you read it, or you can also give me book recommendations because I'm always looking for good books to read. The next book I'm going to be reviewing is Warm Bodies by Isaac Marion. Ooh, there's a hair. I'm pretty excited to be reading it. I'm about 80 pages into it. It's not very big, so I should have the review up by next week. But I'm really looking forward to it. It's okay so far, but I'll have a more in-depth review of what I actually thought of it next week. So, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video.